Hi, and welcome to this informal conversation about pepper spray, or OC, Oleoresin Capsicum. My name is Peter. Today is March 24th, 2021. The information I'm going to be providing to you is, as far as I know, up to date and current. Of course, you always want to make sure you are up to date at whatever time you are viewing this information. I do want to mention that this is just a conversation. There is no certification for pepper spray. There's no certificate. There's no training or professional. This isn't a professional training per se. This is just a conversation that we're having. So, as such, please do not hold me responsible for anything that may happen to you as a result of any actions you take based on the information you're presented with today. So again, we're going to be talking about pepper spray, or OC. I'll be using those phrases kind of interchangeably. I like the pictures that we have here. We have the gentleman in the upper left corner getting exposed, the gentleman in the middle who is, as you can see, in a lot of pain, and the woman in the bottom left in the midst of recovery, or trying to recover. So what is OC? Pepper spray, or Oleoresin Capsicum, is an inflammatory chemical agent made of capsaicin as an active ingredient and an inactive solvent that will evaporate to create a wax-like resin. So for that reason alone, it is very important to get this stuff off of you as quickly as possible, because if you allow it to evaporate, you're going to have that resin that's going to trap the OC on your skin. So you want to get that off of you as soon as possible. And of course, the pain that this stuff produces is going to really make that an urgent thing anyway. Now, OC is not firmly regulated, so concentrations will vary from company to company. Civilian and law enforcement pepper sprays range from 0.18 to 1.33% major capsaicinoids. You want to double check the paperwork that your canister comes with. It will tell you what the concentration is. Major capsaicinoids are the chemical lab measured components of peppers that make them hot. Now on this slide, you'll see that I've actually got 3 different manufacturers: Fox, Defense Technologies, and Sabre. These are the ones that I know for certain that uniformed police officers carry. So these are the ones that I have 100% faith in. Other manufacturers, I don't really know. I'm not that comfortable with, so I could not make any sort of recommendations. What is OC? Again, so there are a few dispersal types. There is the forced cone, the stream, foam, and gel. And you'll be seeing, so this one is the forced cone. That is completely aerosolized as soon as it's dispersed. Next, you have stream. It comes out as a stream, and as it reaches the end of its maximum effective range, you see it becomes aerosolized. Then you have foam. I'm actually not 100% familiar with foam. I don't have that much experience with it. And you have gel. Gel is something that's come up within the last 10 years to more popularity. Gel does retain its stream almost in its entirety of its maximum length of use. The issue with gel that I have is that it's not aerosolized. So part of the effectiveness of pepper spray is when it's breathed in. So then it causes irritation in your respiration. Whereas the gel, not as much. Now, of course, it does appear that the gel does really get on its target. So, there's a give and take to everything. I have read some reports that the gel is not as instantly effective because of the lack of the aerosolization or the aerosol, but it's pepper spray. It's going to hurt regardless. Now, going back to foam, foam and forced cone. Those are the types of dispersals that I've seen mostly used for riot control or crowd control. More so force cone, not so much foam. But in those incidents, in those cases, you'll see that the officers who are using them are actually fully geared up. They have their masks on, they have their protective gear on, so they're not as concerned about contamination or self-contamination. Whereas if you are using it for a self-defense purpose, with the force cone, there's a higher likelihood of self-contamination, which is why I do not recommend that. What is not OC? It's bear mace. Bear mace, we'll get into some more details a little later on, but I don't really recommend that for person-on-person use. Person-on-animal use, that's something you'll have to read up on the manuals. I don't have any experience with that. So what are the effects of OC? OC creates pain, and because of that pain, it will cause temporary blindness and decreased mobility. Not because of anything that the OC does to your body. It does not, the pepper spray itself does not make you blind. It does not make you less mobile. It's the pain that causes that. The pain is going to cause you to close your eyes really tight. It really hurts to open your eyes when you've been sprayed. So you're just not going to want to open them. And because you have been sprayed, because you are blind, it's going to decrease your mobility because you don't want to be moving around and running around, possibly getting even more hurt. Now, if you are exposed to OC, you want to immediately flush the area with running water or flowing air. Of course, water is more preferable. There are, of course, all these stories about water doesn't really do much. When, say, for example, you're eating something spicy, water doesn't do much. It just spreads the oils around. While that is true, if you can find a shower of milk or sugar water or something, more power to you. That'll help get it out as faster than water, but you are more likely to find a source of running water than any other liquid. So hence, wash it out as quickly as you can. You do not want to grind. That is the first impulse, is to cover your eyes and just try to get it out. Don't grind. You're only going to work it in further. There are some companies such as Sabre, which will create specialized lotions or salves to help clear out the area. If you have those, great. If you don't, do not use any unspecialized lotions and unspecialized salves, as it's just another layer that you need to wash off. If possible, you want to remove your any contaminated clothing. Secondary exposure is not generally as bad as primary exposure, but it's still exposure. It's still going to hurt. So better to get the contaminated clothing off as soon as possible, if possible. Okay, so let's talk legality. OC is common across the US. Some states will have their own laws and regulations. You should always research and be aware of your local restrictions. Fun fact, OC is considered a chemical weapon and as such is not allowed in war. Chemical weapons are not allowed in war, but you can use it for self-defense. Now, who cannot own OC? People who cannot own pepper spray are going to be people with felony or assault crime convictions. People with felony or assault crime convictions. Those convicted of misusing pepper spray. People addicted to illicit substances. And minors under the age of 16. Over the age of 16, people can carry pepper spray with written permission from their parent or guardian, or if they are directly under parent-guardian supervision. Now in California, civilians are prohibited from carrying OC canisters larger than 2.5 ounces. Packages that the pepper spray is purchased with must inform users that the item may be used for self-defense only, and the manufacturers must include a useful shelf life date, usage and first aid instructions, and include an explanation of the legal consequences for illegal use. As far as shelf life date goes, you will either see an expiration date on the canister or manufacturing date. If you see manufacturing date, expiration date is typically 5 years following the manufacturing date. And I mentioned bear mace earlier. Bear mace is defined in California as a pesticide. For this reason, you can carry a canister greater than 2.5 ounces, which bypasses that restriction mentioned earlier. but this also means it is illegal to use on another person. Bear mace can be used on a bear or any other wild animal, but it is illegal to use it on another person, which brings me to the next slide, and that's why I have this slide as a slide unto itself. For one fact, it is a felony to use pepper spray offensively. You must be in fear of your safety. If you are not in fear of your safety and you use pepper spray on someone, it is a felony. This can result in a maximum of 3 years prison time, a fine of up to $1,000, or both. So please, please, please make sure to use it only in a defensive manner, and it is something that you will need to be able to articulate. If it's, for example, if you have a 300-pound guy who looks menacing and just happens to walk by you on a dark alley, that's not going to work. But if he's threatening you, if he's carrying a weapon or something like that, and you use the spray, as long as you can articulate why you felt that you were going to be in harm, then you're okay using it. Now let's discuss use and strategy. Pepper spray is only effective in the face. The effective range is typically 3 to 10 feet. So you want to make sure you aim for the head. It's effective in the mucous membranes of the body. Of course, if you have, like, say, cuts or injuries in your skin, then it could hurt that area, but it is most effective in the face. You want to be aware of the conditions that will affect your use, such as wind or rain. I would recommend that you use your canisters like you would a joystick. You want to hold it in this manner, where your whole hand is wrapped around it and your thumb is actuating the button. Please avoid using it in this manner, where you're holding it partially covered with your hand. If you look carefully, you'll see that if this person who's being sprayed right now wanted to, they could more easily pry it out of the defender's hand versus the other way, where the person's entire hand surrounding it, it's harder to take out of their grasp. Now I mentioned effective range. You want to check going back to that, you want to check your documentation that your canister comes with. It will tell you what the range typically is. It will give you maximum range, and the minimum range doesn't mean that it's less effective under that range. So, for example, typically 3 to 10 feet doesn't mean that 1 to 3 feet, or from the canister to 3 feet, it's ineffective. It just means that if you are using it in that close proximity, you are much more likely to contaminate yourself. So another thing to be aware of is overconfidence. A lot of people will sometimes have that pepper spray or that OC, they'll have in their bag and they'll know, hey, I'm set, I'm ready. Overconfidence can be a handicap. You always want to be aware of what's going on. It's not something that will always work. Pepper spray or OC works on pain receptors. If you are dealing with, say, for example, someone who's on something that's suppressing pain, like PCP or some other illicit drug, it's not going to work. They may just brush it right off and keep after you. Typically, it will work on a wild animal because wild animals are smarter. They know that if they're hurt, they know to retreat and all that. But if this is a person-on-person confrontation, just keep in mind that pepper spray is not a guaranteed thing to work. Now, movement is important. So as I mentioned earlier, once you are exposed to pepper spray, it causes temporary blindness. When that person or the animal closes their eyes, they still know the last location they saw you at. So if you are using your pepper spray, spray it and move. Get out of that location. That way they are less likely to know where you are. If you need to use your OC, it's an emergency. So do not conserve it. Use as much as you need to stop the threat or pause the threat and give you a chance to escape. That's not to say that you need to go after the person and spray them even if they're screaming, stop, 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 and spraying them until the canister is empty. You don't want to do that. That's asking for trouble. Just spray as much as you need to for the threat to stop or pause long enough for you to get away. And if you look over to the right side of this slide, you'll see some of the physical effects of the pepper spray. And you'll see over on the right hand side, throat, chest. This is one of the advantages of having the pepper spray in an aerosol form. Okay, care and maintenance. So you want to keep in mind this is a pressurized canister. As such, you should not be putting this in a location where a pressurized can should not be. For example, you don't want to have it in a car exposed to sunlight on a hot summer day. It would be terrible for that can to burst and then you coming back to your car to what is essentially a gas chamber. Pressurized canisters are not allowed as carry-ons on an airline. TSA will allow pressurized cans of pepper spray to be brought on board a plane via check-in baggage, but they say you need to check with your airline first. Personally, I would say don't do it. Last thing you want is for you to get to your location, open up your suitcase, and find that everything is contaminated. So better to just leave it at home, and if you really need it at your new location, just buy something there. You'll also want to check the nozzle of your canister for obstructions. Make sure there's no dirt or debris that's worked its way in there that may obstruct the pepper spray from coming out. You'll also want to check for leaks. Again, it's a pressurized canister. It's very easy to do. Just submerge it in water and see if there's bubbles coming out. If you have bubbles, you have a leak. No bubbles, no leak. If you have no bubbles, that could also mean that it's already all leaked out. But if that is the case, you'll know because it's pepper spray. You'll know. The contents of the canister will settle. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to shake it up every so often, make sure that everything's mixed up, the propellant and the capsicum and all that stuff. So I would recommend when you get ready to go out for a walk, or if you just happen to see it in your bag or purse, just pick it up and give it a shake. As long as you don't let it sit for too long, you'll be fine. You'll always want to be cognizant of the expiration date. Again, that's going to be on the canister or the paperwork that comes with the canister. It'll say expiration date if it has just a date by itself. Typically, that's a manufacturing date. So just add 5 years to that. It's not the capsicum that expires. Rather, it's more the propellant. The capsicum will last a little bit longer, but it no longer becomes reliable as far as getting it out of the canister. And of course, I would highly recommend at least one test use. When you get your new can, your new spray, just give it a good test, maybe a half a second to 1 second burst. It'll confirm that you have a good canister, not something that's defective, and 2, it'll give you a good idea as to the pattern of spray, how far to go, what the effective range is. You have something to actually compare to rather than just feet dimensions or something that you may not be able to determine right away. When you do that test spray, I would recommend it in a very highly ventilated area. Do not do it indoors. That's a really good way to contaminate yourself. Maybe take it out to a yard or take it out to the side of the home. Just give it a spray, and then someplace where you have a lot of airflow. Give it a spray, and if you are concerned about contamination, just rinse it down too. Another option you could do, not highly recommended because you kind of lose the idea for the range, but you could get an empty bottle and spray in there. That way you can at least know for certain that your canister is functioning correctly. Also, if you want to, you can spray the bottle and kind of give it a smell, see how strong it is. But yes, I would highly recommend at least one test use. Now, some personal safety tips outside of the pepper spray. You always want to be aware of your surroundings. Pay attention where you are. Keep your head up and your eyes moving. If you can, leave your phone in your pocket. It's outdoors. Be present in the moment. Don't be walking around with your nose buried in the phone. It's a good way to not only get attacked by an animal, but it's a good way to get hit by a car, hit by a bicyclist. In our area here, you could step into well, people are usually good about cleaning up after their pets, but you never know. Something that guys are usually worse than women is never walk extended distances with your hands full. Women tend to be better knowing this sort of thing. Guys, not as much. Noise is always your best friend. You may want to consider carrying a whistle if you're concerned about the neighborhood you're in. If you have a key fob where you have a panic button, maybe keep that handy, keep that ready. If you are in an area where you're concerned more about wildlife, you can whistle, talk, or sing to yourself when you're walking in those areas. Large percentage of the time, the wildlife will notice you before you notice them. Every so often, you may come up on an animal and surprise them. That's usually not a good thing. That will trigger their fight or flight mode, and startled animals can be dangerous animals. So try to make some noise. If you're in an area where you think there's going to be some animals around, try to make some noise, and they'll avoid you, unless of course you run into some more predatory animals such as coyotes, and I'll go into that in just a little bit. You want to be familiar with your local wildlife and strategies to avoid attacks. Alright, so we have here a little graphic about coyote encounters, and it says smart, so be smart. S, stop, do not run. When you run, you can trigger the predatory instincts of coyotes and have them chase after you. If you have a small dog with you, pick it up, keep it close. M, make yourself look bigger. Raise your arms, hold your jacket open above your head, wave items around. Make the coyote believe you are not worth the effort. Coyotes are smart. They can take down big animals, but they also know that they risk being injured if they take an animal that's too big. So if you make yourself look bigger, you are less appetizing to them. A, announce loudly, leave me alone. Again, we get back to noise. Making noise is good. So you want to make as much noise as you can, scare the coyote, and it will also help indicate to nearby people that you may need some help. Make a lot of noise, use noisemakers. Again, going back to that whistle idea earlier. R, retreat. Back away slowly. Do not run. Back away slowly. Do not turn your back. Running may trigger that chase response. And T, teach. Tell your friends and neighbors about haze and coyotes and report any concerning incidents to local authorities. Learn about coyotes' natural behavior so you know how to respond. So contact local animal control. This is very important. If you do encounter aggressive animals, contact animal control. They need to know where these animals are. And if they can get an idea, if they can get a pattern as to where they are, then they can go ahead and take care of those. Now, if we go to the rightmost part of the slide, this is a screenshot from a video that was taken, I believe it was January 2021. I may be a month or so off. But this was a hiker in Utah that was going on a hike and stumbled across a mountain lion and her cubs. And the maternal instinct took over. That mountain lion got very aggressive, and it's a minute and a half, I think, minute 45 seconds or so. The video is the mountain lion lunging and retreating, and you hear the hiker doing his absolute best to scare the mountain lion away. The hiker does pretty much everything that you see in this graphic about coyotes. He's making a lot of noise, he's yelling. I'm pretty sure he's waving with his free hand, the other hand holding his recording device, of course. And he's doing everything right. At one point, towards the end, he risks getting down to pick up a rock to throw at the mountain lion, and that convinces the lion to leave him alone and run off. I say risk because when he stoops down to pick up something, he becomes smaller. And being a smaller target makes the animal much more aggressive. So hindsight being 2020, in this case, maybe it may have been a good idea to try to kick some rocks. You can see the path that he's on. There's a lot of rocks there. So maybe if he kicked some rocks, maybe that might have changed the mountain lion's ideas or changed her mind earlier. But all the same, the guy did everything he was supposed to do, and fortunately, he's able to walk away from the encounter. Okay, and then of course, last slide here we have comments and questions. Of course, this being a pre-recorded item that's on YouTube, I can't take any questions at this time. However, if you want to ask them in the comments below, you are more than welcome to. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. The creation of this video is specifically for a next door post because we are encountering more coyotes out here in my neighborhood. If you have questions, you can put it in that post and I can try to get back to you as soon as possible. There's plenty of information online. There's a lot of videos on YouTube about pepper spray as well. I would encourage you to do some research there, but of course I'd be more than happy to answer whatever questions I am capable of answering. That is about it. Thank you very much for participating and watching this video, and I hope you have a great, safe day.